What's going on, fellas? Wanted to make a quick video today discussing whether, based on your goals, you should be utilizing leg drive in your bench or not. And we're going to be looking at maybe three categories of people, the major categories of goals that might be interested in my channel, because that is who I'm talking to. One, we have people who are primarily concerned with strength and not so much with hypertrophy, meaning obviously hypertrophy matters for our strength outcome, but they're not so concerned with how they look past accruing necessary hypertrophy to drive the strength that they want. How they look necessarily isn't part of their goals. Two, someone whose goals are kind of evenly split between strength and hypertrophy and how they look. And C, someone who is mostly just concerned with hypertrophy, more specifically meaning how they look, right? So we're going to go through in order and discuss whether using leg drive in the bench is something that you should be looking into. If you are someone who's only concerned with strength, absolutely, we should be using leg drive. We want to master that skill. It's just a part of the technique of bench press when we are using it as a strength training motion. That being said, the inclusion of a feet up bench press or a Larson bench press can be a very good accessory motion, so that we're not necessarily missing out on some pec strength development by relying overly on our leg drive. But the key word that I just mentioned is that we should be using the feet up or the Larson press as an accessory. I generally speaking would recommend that you don't phase out feet down bench completely for your hypertrophy phases. Some people might be like, oh, well, I'll grow my pecs better that way. Yes, but as we talked about, leg drive is a skill, and it's a good skill. It's not a bad skill to have, right? So we don't want to necessarily deal with that skill detraining by phasing out the lift for an extended period of time. Instead, we'll use it as an adjunct, right? Maybe we do some working sets feet down and then do some accessories feet up, or we have one day feet down, we have one day feet up. However we break that down, which brings me to the person who has both aesthetic and strength-related goals. And for that person, it's very much going to be the same answer. Because you also have strength-related goals, understanding and utilizing the skill that is leg drive within a bench press is still absolutely a worthwhile use of your time. But even more so than the person only concerned with strength, we want to make sure that we're not so reliant on our leg drive that it actually is taking away from some potential pec development. So what we could do is we could take it so far as going 50-50. Half of our benching is feet down, half of it's feet up. Maybe if you're someone who's good at leg drive and doesn't necessarily need that additional practice, we could take that ratio even further and do 3 feet up benches for every 1 feet down bench, right? Fiddling with that ratio to fit your goals of strength to hypertrophy can be absolutely appropriate. And then I think one thing that I'm going to bring up in the hypertrophy goal thing that is a little bit different for the strength is we don't want necessarily motor patterns interfering with one another. So we can, if we're interested in strength, whether it's our only goal or it's half of our goals, we have the nice option of we can differentiate between, okay, we have our bench press with our feet down where we always utilize leg drive, and then we also have feet up where we physically couldn't leg drive. Well, the hypertrophy person doesn't have to worry about like muddling signals, because if you're training for strength and you said, okay, well, I've got one day where my feet are down but I don't use leg drive, and one day where my feet are up or also down and I do use leg drive, right? Those kind of motor patterns are going to intermingle, and you're going to end up botching your leg drive on your main lift. So we differentiate by taking the legs away completely. Now, if your goal is only related to how you look, maximizing our muscular hypertrophy, we don't need to take the legs away. We just need to not utilize leg drive in our feet down bench press. And I would contest that for hypertrophy-based goals, that doing a feet down bench press but without significant amounts of leg drive is going to be our best bet. That's what we can see most bodybuilders that do bother to train bench press, this is what they do. And the reason for this is even if we're not using leg drive to assist us in pressing the weight off the chest, we can still get tense through our legs and use them as a stabilizing musculature, get tight through the glutes, kind of push our heels down into the ground, create some lateral stability that is taken away if we were to go to feet up, where it's more 1 degree less stable, where if you get a little bit off to each side, they can really inhibit your ability to output force. And we don't want anything other than the contractile properties of our pecs to be the limiting factor if our primary concern is hypertrophy of the pecs. So in that regard, Yes, we take away our ability to use leg drive to kind of take away from the pecs by moving our feet up, but we're also making it one deviation less stable, and it's just another thing that could potentially fail before our pecs. So instead, we master the skill of never using the leg drive, but always keeping our tension. So when things get hard, our ass doesn't shoot up off the bench. We don't have that necessary breakdown, but we can still always have that stability. It would be a similar argument to say if someone was only concerned with growing the size of their delts, they would not do a standing overhead press because there's no reason for core stability or balance or maybe even bar path to be the limiting factor. All we want to be the limiting factor is the contractile property of our delts. Much the same if we're doing a flat press, we could think of, in this simile, right, we could think of the Larson press as more akin to the standing, whereas getting stable with our feet under us is more akin to a seated overhead press. So this would be my breakdown. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. Thank you guys as always for watching my videos. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. I appreciate y'all.